Look closely at the people around you today, perhaps on your morning drive to work, or sitting across from you in the office, or even walking down the aisle at the grocery store. You will likely see someone do something frustrating. You will watch them make a mistake or do something entirely irrational, and a thought will pop into your head almost immediately. You will think to yourself, that person is just not very smart. But what if the very thought you just had right there is the exact psychological marker of a rigid, struggling mind? We have been taught a very specific story about what it means to be smart. We have been conditioned to believe that a low IQ is loud and obvious. We think it looks like failing a math test in school, or struggling to read a map, or not knowing the capital of a country, or mispronouncing a big word at a dinner party. But psychology, and the deep, quiet study of the human mind, tells a much different story. There are everyday, highly subtle habits, things you and I do in casual conversation, things we do when we are making coffee or reading the news, that instantly reveal a mind that is trapped, a mind that is running away from its own shadow. And one of these habits, perhaps the most damaging of them all, is something you likely did this very morning without even realizing it. I am going to tell you exactly what that habit is, but we must take a short journey to get there first. To understand human intelligence, we have to stop looking at the brain like it is a computer hard drive that just stores random facts. That is not what makes a person smart. Think of the mind instead as a vast, dark, endlessly deep ocean. Intelligence is not the water itself. Intelligence is the ship. It is how well you navigate the terrifying, unpredictable waves of the unknown. Carl Jung, the great pioneer of human psychology, understood that the part of our mind that we are actually aware of, our conscious mind, is just a tiny little island in that massive ocean. Most of what drives us every single day, our deep fears, our sudden reactions, our quick judgments, lives far beneath the surface, completely hidden from our view. And when a person possesses what we might call a low intelligence or a low capacity to think deeply, what we are really seeing on the outside is a terrifying, overwhelming fear of that deep water. Let us look at how this fear shows up in everyday life. Let us look at the first habit. Consider the overwhelming need to be absolutely certain about everything. Have you ever tried to have a normal conversation with someone about a complicated issue? Maybe you are talking about a problem at work, or a difficult family situation, or something happening in the news. And notice how some people immediately reduce that complicated problem into entirely black and white terms. To them, there are only good guys and bad guys. There is right, and there is wrong. There is the total victim, and the complete villain. There is absolutely no middle ground. In psychology, we call this a lack of cognitive flexibility, but in very simple, everyday English, it is an inability to handle the unknown. Imagine a man you work with. Let us call him David. David is a creature of deep habit. He comes into the office at the exact same time every day. He makes his coffee with 2 sugars, never 3. He likes his paperwork done in a very specific order. Now, imagine that one Tuesday morning, the management team introduces a brand new computer system. It completely changes how David has to do his job. A highly intelligent mind looks at this new, confusing situation, feels a brief moment of normal frustration, and then adapts. They figure it out. They build a new mental bridge over the unknown territory. David, however, does not do this. David becomes irrationally angry. His face gets red. He complains loudly to anyone who will listen. He insists the old way was perfect, and this new way is garbage. He might even attack the personality of the manager who brought in the new system, calling them names. Why does David react like this? It is not because David is a bad person. It is because not knowing what to do, that feeling of ambiguity, feels like an actual physical threat to his survival. A rigid mind needs the world to be simple. It needs everything to be predictable and firmly put into neat little boxes. If a new idea, or a new computer system, or a new way of living does not fit perfectly into a box they already understand, they do not stretch their mind to learn it. They attack it. They push it away. If you find yourself needing to be absolutely certain about everything in your life, if you feel a deep, burning anger in your chest when someone challenges the way you view the world, you are watching your own mind try to protect you from the discomfort of having to grow. You are locking yourself in a tiny room because you are afraid of the wind outside. But there is a deeper, even more profound habit that shows the true limits of a mind. And it is something that destroys our relationships every single day. The famous writer F. Scott Fitzgerald once said something very beautiful. He said that the true test of a first-rate mind is the ability to hold two completely opposite ideas in your head at the exact same time and still be able to function. The absolute most glaring habit of a low-functioning mind is the exact opposite of this. It is a psychological habit known as splitting. Let me give you a very real, very normal situation that happens all the time. Think about a famous public figure. Maybe it is a politician or an actor or a business leader whom you absolutely cannot stand. You despise this person. You disagree with their morals. You hate the way they talk. You think everything they do is toxic. Now, I want you to imagine that you wake up tomorrow morning, you check your phone, and you read a highly verified news article proving, without a single doubt, that this person you hate just secretly donated $20 million to completely save a children's hospital from closing down. Pay attention to what happens in your body right now, just imagining this scenario. A mind with deep emotional and mental power can process this strange paradox. A strong mind can look at that news and say, "Wow, this person is deeply flawed and I really do not like them, but they also just did a profoundly good thing." They can hold the light and the dark in the same space. They can accept that a person can be bad and good at the same time. A mind with a lower capacity cannot do this. It is impossible for them. The psychological pain of holding two conflicting truths in the head at the same time is called cognitive dissonance, and for a rigid mind, that pain is too heavy. It actually hurts. So, the brain has to relieve the pressure. To fix the pain, they will instantly invent a story to protect their simple, black and white view of the world. They will say, "Oh, he only donated that money for a tax write-off." Or they will say, "That hospital is probably corrupt anyway." Or they will say, "He is just doing it for good PR. He doesn't actually care about children." They must make the person all bad. There can be no good in them. Carl Jung called the parts of ourselves and the world that we refuse to accept the shadow. Every single one of us has a shadow. We all have anger, jealousy, greed, and sadness hiding inside of us. When a person constantly splits the world into angels and demons, when they think everyone is either perfect or completely evil, they are actually just projecting their own hidden shadow onto the world. They cannot accept that they, themselves, are capable of both great good and great evil. And because they cannot accept the dark parts of themselves, they cannot accept it in anyone else. We do this in our romantic relationships all the time. Think of someone who meets a new partner and thinks this person is perfect. They put them on a pedestal. They are an angel. But the moment that partner makes one mistake, maybe they forget to call or they say something slightly rude, the switch flips. Suddenly the partner is pure evil. They are a monster. They must be cut off completely. When you see someone who is completely incapable of seeing the basic humanity in the people they dislike, you are not looking at someone with strong moral values. You are looking at a profound lack of psychological intelligence. You are looking at a mind that is entirely run by fear. Take a slow breath with me. Look at those rocks in the river. They do not move. They sit there, completely rigid, letting the water rush over them, slowly wearing them down over thousands of years. The rocks believe their stillness is strength. They think because they are hard, they are powerful. But the true strength belongs to the water. The water adapts to every shape, every curve, and every single obstacle. If a rock is in the way, the water does not get angry. It simply flows around it. Which brings us to the next habit, the way we use our voices. There is a very strange, very quiet illusion that controls our modern world. We tend to believe that the person speaking the most is the one who knows the most. Think about the last time you were at a dinner party, or a family barbecue, or a big meeting at work. There is almost always one person completely dominating the room. Let us call him Mark. Mark speaks loudly. He speaks with total confidence. And Mark seems to have an absolute, unshakable opinion on every single topic on earth. If someone brings up international economics, Mark knows exactly how to fix it. If someone brings up a new medical study, Mark tells everyone why the doctors are wrong. If someone is grilling hamburgers, Mark stands over their shoulder and tells them exactly why they are flipping the meat wrong. Psychology has a very famous term for this kind of behavior. It is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Simply put, it is a mental blind spot where people with very little actual knowledge about a subject greatly overestimate how much they know. They do not know enough to realize how much they do not know. But let us look much deeper than just a psychological term. Let us look into the soul of this behavior. Why does Mark feel the need to fill every single silence with his own voice? True, deep intelligence is incredibly comfortable with silence. It is comfortable with saying 3 simple words, I do not know. When you possess a high degree of mental power, you realize how massive the universe of knowledge truly is. It is like looking up at the night sky away from the city lights. You see millions of stars, and you realize how incredibly small you are. Every time you read a book or learn something new, you realize there are 10 more things you do not understand. True intelligence humbles you. It makes you quiet. Therefore, the habit of constantly talking, of constantly projecting an image that you are the smartest person in the room, is a giant ego defense mechanism. It is exactly like a small animal in the woods puffing up its chest and making loud noises to appear much larger to predators. The person who cannot stop talking is terrified. They are terrified that if they stop talking, if they simply sit back and listen, they might be exposed as a fraud. If they stop making noise, they might have to actually sit quietly with their own internal emptiness. They use their words as a shield to keep people from getting too close to their insecurities. If you want to measure the true depth of someone's mind, do not measure how many big words they use. Do not measure how loudly they argue. Measure how well they listen. Measure how comfortable they are when no one is speaking. Measure how often they ask a genuine, curious question about a topic they know absolutely nothing about. And this leads us perfectly into the next everyday habit: how a person reacts to things that are weird, different, or unfamiliar. When a highly intelligent mind encounters something it does not understand, maybe it is a strange piece of modern art, or a bizarre cultural tradition from another country, or a brand new type of technology, its very first emotional reaction is curiosity. The smart mind leans forward. It wants to pick the thing up. It wants to take the gears apart and see how they turn. It says, I don't get this at all, but I want to. When a mind with low capacity encounters something it does not understand, its very first emotional reaction is contempt, disgust, mockery. Think of the person who walks into an art museum, looks at a highly abstract painting of shapes and colors, rolls their eyes and scoffs, My 5-year-old could paint that. This is incredibly stupid. Or think of the older person who sees teenagers using a new social media app, dancing or communicating in a new way, and immediately says, "This generation is brain dead. This is all garbage." Or the person who travels to a foreign country, hears a language they do not speak, and mocks the way it sounds. Calling the unknown stupid is the ultimate psychological shield. Think about what is really happening inside their brain. If a painting or a new technology or a foreign culture is completely beyond your current level of understanding, it makes you feel small. It makes you feel left behind. It makes you feel ignorant. You only have two choices when you feel that way. Choice 1, you can admit your ignorance. You can say, "I don't understand this." But that requires you to be vulnerable. It requires you to admit you are not perfect, and it requires you to spend energy trying to learn. Choice 2, you can completely devalue the thing you do not understand. You can strip it of all its worth. You can call it stupid or ugly or worthless. Because if the painting is stupid, then you don't have to feel bad for not understanding it. You are actually superior to it. Contempt for the unfamiliar is the absolute hallmark of a lazy mind. It is a total refusal to grow. It is a person deciding that the tiny little box they currently live in is the entire universe, and anything outside of that box is trash. Earlier in our journey together, right at the beginning, I mentioned that there is one specific habit, the most revealing sign of low intelligence, that you likely did this very morning. I asked you in the very first seconds of this video to think of someone you saw today who did something foolish or annoying. I asked you to remember the thought you had in your head, "That person is just not very smart." That quick, effortless judgment is the habit. When we look at a total stranger and instantly reduce their entire, massive, complicated human life down to a single word like stupid, we are falling into the exact same trap we have been exploring this whole time. We are seeking quick certainty. We are refusing to hold the difficult paradox of their life. We are reacting with contempt instead of curiosity. Let us go back to that morning drive. Someone cuts you off in traffic. They swerve into your lane without a blinker. Your immediate reaction is anger. You grip the steering wheel, you honk your horn and you yell, "What an absolute idiot! How stupid can you be?" But stop and think for a moment. Think about what it takes to actually use your mind. Perhaps that person who just cut you off was not mentally slow. Perhaps they were blinded by tears because they just got a phone call that their father passed away. Perhaps the co-worker who could not figure out how to use the copy machine this morning is not stupid. Perhaps they are running on 2 hours of sleep because they were up all night nursing a sick baby with a fever. Perhaps the teenager who gave you the wrong change at the coffee shop is not an idiot. Perhaps they suffer from severe social anxiety, and just standing at that cash register is taking every ounce of bravery they have, and their hands are shaking too much to count the coins properly. Assuming someone is stupid based on a 5-second interaction is a total failure of our own imagination. It is a failure of empathy, and empathy at its core is the absolute highest form of human intelligence. Why? Because empathy requires immense brain power. Empathy requires the cognitive ability to map your own mind onto the mind of a total stranger. It requires you to build a simulation in your head of their inner world, to understand their pain, their fear, and their motivations, without completely losing your own sense of self. A low IQ mind cannot run that simulation. It takes too much energy. It is much easier to just slap a label on the person, call them a fool, and move on with your day feeling superior. The human mind is a mirror. What you judge most harshly in other people is almost always what you are deeply terrified of within yourself. When we call others stupid, we are usually just trying to soothe our own deep-seated fear of being entirely inadequate. We push others down so we can briefly feel like we are standing on higher ground. We spend so much of our lives trying to prove to the world how smart we are. We work hard to accumulate college degrees. We argue with strangers in comment sections on the internet. We memorize random facts and statistics just so we can deploy them like weapons in casual conversations to impress people who do not really care. But all of this is just noise. It is just the ego, desperately trying to build a thick stone wall to keep the terrifying, beautiful, completely unknown universe at bay. If you have been listening to this, and you find that you see some of these habits in yourself, if you recognize your own stubborn rigidity, your own desperate need to always be right, your own fear of the gray areas of life, do not feel shame. Do not beat yourself up. The very fact that you can observe these traits within yourself right now means you have the power to rise above them. The part of you that is watching your own mind is always greater and smarter than the mind itself. It is time to slowly unbuckle and drop the heavy, exhausting armor of having to know everything. It is incredibly freeing to just let it go. Because when you stop trying to protect your own image, something amazing happens. You stop manipulating the people around you to feel safe. And that brings us to the next step of our journey. If you want to continue exploring the deeper, quieter layers of your own psychology, if you want to understand the invisible emotional forces that drive your behavior so you can finally break free from them, I highly invite you to subscribe to this channel. In our next video, we are going to dive deep into the psychology of the people pleaser. We are going to uncover the hidden, often highly manipulative shadow behaviors that completely masquerade as being a nice guy or a sweet girl. We will explore how constantly trying to make others happy is actually a trauma response, a way of controlling your environment so you do not get hurt. Understanding this concept will permanently change how you view every single relationship in your life. True intelligence is not a perfect score on a math test. It is not knowing all the answers. True intelligence is simply having the courage to sit quietly in the dark with your own ignorance and slowly, patiently light a candle. If you are finally ready to stop running away from what you do not know about the world and what you do not know about yourself, then your true education has finally begun.